Good morning and welcome to Race Industry Now, the weekly webinar series from ePowerTrade, presented to you by ARP, Performance Plus Global Logistics, PIC, Feria Racing Components, and Fifth Third Banks Motorsports. I am Francisque Savignan, the founder and CEO of ePowerTrade, the racing industry, every minute, every day. This is episode 441, and we're going to talk to SADEV about transmissions. With me this morning are Julie Kin, the co-founder of ePowerTrade, and a wonderful host, Mr. Brad Gillie. Julie.
Thank you, Francisque, and thank you everybody for joining this week. I don't know if you all noticed our newsletters recently. We brought on board another girl that we used to work with at PRI, Andrea Brake. So we're delighted to have her join us this week. And that just means we're going to grow more. We have that many more contacts, and we have 50 plus years of experience in trade shows. So this platform is working, and it's just going to snowball into more products for the buyers out there. So I'm delighted to have her on board. How are you, Brad?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you very much. And I'm really looking forward to today's webinar. So, and by the way, I do love the newsletters. The fact that Race Industry Now and all of that has expanded as much as it has to YouTube and everywhere else. So it's great to see all of these just live on, and a lot of people have the opportunity to check them out.
Yes.
Absolutely. And if I can just say a few words about SADEV, it's a company that's close to my heart, not just because they're French, but it's actually one of the most iconic French company in the motorsport industry. They are celebrating their 50th anniversary this year. It was started by a brilliant entrepreneur, Mr. Vincent Do, 50 years ago in a little garage with his wife. And today it's a brilliant company with a huge factory in France, 250 people there, offices around the world, and it's one of the top suppliers and transmission in the world. So we're delighted and privileged to have them on today. Good morning, Fuzzy. Good morning,
Fuzzy
Mike.
is an icon in the industry. So.
Good morning.
It is, and so is Mike. We're starting the webinar, Brad, with a short little video, and then we'll let you take over.
Sounds good.
Sometimes, the difference between victory and defeat is just 1/10 of a second. In the blink of an eye, you've moved from the shadows into the spotlight. This decisive fraction of a second is made possible by a series of elements, crafted to perfection by men and women who are laser-focused on the same goal. It all starts with an alloy, often rare, with properties and in grades that meet the highest aerospace standards. It is cut, machined, drilled, and shaped. Each step is methodical and precise. There is no room for error. The most advanced technology is used so that man and machine can become one and push the bounds of excellence. Every second shaved off a race is the fruit of our unique expertise and the efforts of dedicated engineers who work hand in hand with highly qualified technicians. A triumphant win may hinge on a mere 1/10 of a second, but the work behind it is anything but minuscule. Seconds turn into hours, days, and weeks, during which our team lose track of time as they work tirelessly to develop the transmissions of the future. Using a watchmaker's precision, each element finds its place. Building on this technological alchemy, we watch the fruits of our expertise and hard work become a reality.
We can advise you and give you technical details.
Our teams are here to listen, advise, and assist you with services to meet your needs throughout the world. At SADEV, we strive to constantly push the boundaries of perfection with high-tech transmissions. Because nothing motivates us more than watching that elusive 1/10 of a second light up your face.
I have to say, that was very, very impressive, and I look forward to learning a lot more about this here over the next several minutes. Today's title of the webinar: Increase Your Performance with a Sequential Gearbox with SADEV Transmissions Incorporated. And even though this is a French company, we're going all the way to Mooresville, North Carolina, to talk with Jeff Fuzzy Horton, the operations manager at SADEV Transmissions, and Mike Dusold, the founder of Dusold Designs and a SADEV ambassador. Fuzzy, let me start with you. Welcome, first of all. We're glad you're here today, and give us a little bit of an overview of what we're going to be talking about here today.
Well, first, thanks for having SADEV and Mike on. It's a great platform, I think, to get our message out, our products out, the company out to a wider audience. So today we're going to be talking about how sequential transmissions can increase your performance on the racetrack. And there's kind of two ways we're coming at that. We have, high-end motorsports guys that are probably, already familiar with sequential transmissions, but maybe we can show some of the technology that SADEV uses. And then we have grassroots guys that are, time attack guys or autocross that they've pushed their car to the limit, and now they're needing to make that next step into a sequential type transmission.
Yeah, really impressive. Mike, give us a little bit of your background, if you would, please.
So I've been working on cars and building cars since I was a kid. Grew up in a body shop that my grandfather started in the 40s, and my dad was always a racer, and we'd raced cars and raced bikes my whole life. And now I've got our shop, Dusold Designs, in Louisville, Texas, where we strive to build cars that are kind of a mix between street cars and race cars. We've kind of evolved from autocross and then moved forward into ultimate streetcar type racing, all the way to where now we do Pikes Peak hill climb and time attack racing. So it's kind of developed and grown, and we've got more and more technology and smarter people around us to try and make an understanding of why is race industry technology what it is, and how can we incorporate that into cars that maybe people would use on the street and also on the racetrack, and to kind of trying to blur that line between a race car and a street car.
Well, that's really interesting. By the way, I'm just a couple of counties over from you here in Wise County, Texas, so I'll have to come by and say hello at some point. Fuzzy, let's get back to you. Francis mentioned this, a 50-year history with SADEV, and everything that you guys have been doing has really just been incredible for the performance industry. Let's talk about exactly what you produced and the sequential gearboxes and things we're going to be talking about here.
Yeah. So SADEV's a family owned business, still family owned business. We're celebrating our 50-year anniversary this year. I think one thing that makes SADEV a little unique is we have a completely integrated manufacturing process where everything is done in-house. We don't do the castings in-house, but once we get a raw casting in-house, we take it from there. And you saw in the video, we're approximately 250 employees now. We have very large engineering and design department. We're using all the latest technology for designing and optimizing our transmissions. All the transmissions that we do produce are sequential shift transmissions. I think the company started out doing gear kits for existing race car transmissions, and then over the 50 years it's evolved. We've got a new director on board for about the last 12 months now, and he's really brought a business mindset and taken the company to the next level with expanding. We're looking forward to the next 10 years at least.
Well, let's talk about sequential transmissions, and obviously they've been around for quite a few decades now, but it really seems like, especially in motorsports, that it's becoming more of the standard. Why sequential versus a traditional H pattern?
Well, it mainly revolves around the shifting aspect, right? So, especially on race cars, that the power band of the motor is narrow or up high, or a turbo motor, you need to make a quick shift so that you don't fall off in the power band. So sequential transmissions are basically designed like a motorcycle transmission with a shift barrel inside, and the shift barrel rotates, and you just take every gear from first through sixth, or six down to first, and it only takes one action of your hand to do that. The next leap to that is paddle shifting, which you don't even have to take your hand off the steering wheel.
Yeah, which is impressive. Mike, on your side of things, let's talk about, what you've come across, what you've experienced that drove your need to go to sequential transmissions.
So initially, when you start to think about sequential transmissions, what everybody goes to is how quickly they shift, and the ability to, if you have a lever, you're just one quick pull of a lever and you'll get the next gear. And if you have a paddle, you'll be able to just hit a paddle. The main thing has been the ability to get the gears exactly the ratio that we want for every individual gear. So when you have a regular transmission, it's like an H pattern or something like that, you're going to have kind of factory picked gear ratios. And those gear ratios a lot of times are chosen because they're good for economy, things like that, in a factory type H pattern car. When you get into a higher level of racing, you kind of want to make sure that you have the appropriate gear ratio to get your car in the right part of the power band for that specific speed that you're wanting to go. So, a lot of sequential transmissions are used in road race cars, and they can kind of tailor for specific tracks and specific corners what the gear ratios are that they want for those corners. But even for us, like in an autocross, there's kind of an average speed range that an autocross is. And if your transmission doesn't have the right gear ratio, you constantly find yourself between gears. So by being able to choose that gear and work with somebody like Fuzzy and go, hey, I need my car to have this RPM at this speed with this tire size, you can gain a ton of performance. And not only does that shifting help, but getting those gear ratios exactly where you want them is great. And the cool thing about a product like a Motorsport transmission like the SADEV is that they have that ability to change those. And we also have, what's called a drop gear on the input shaft of the transmission. And that drop gear will allow you to change all of the gears up and down by a percentage just by swapping those gears. And sometimes, if you have the right gear package, you can just invert the gears and go from like a low to a high. So say if you're on a short track and you want a little bit lower gears, you just swap your drop gears. And then you go to a faster track, you could just swap them back. And things like that can be a really big advantage. And it's one of the advantages that a lot of people don't know exists and they don't think of. They're just like, oh, well, I'm going to have quicker up and down shifts. They don't think of the fact that, oh, no, it's way bigger than that. I'm going to be able to have my engine in the sweet spot of the power band all the time. And you can tailor the shifts, how much it drops between gears. So if you look at the dyno graph of your car, where's my horsepower peak and where's my torque peak, and you can leverage those appropriately through having the gear ratios perfect.
You know what? And that's amazing. And Fuzzy, I think probably a great opportunity to talk about what SADEV offers when it comes to customizable ratios and everything like that.
Yeah, we've got expansive ratio choices in every one of our gearbox models. So we'll start with the customer that will, like Mike said, they'll send us their engine RPM, the tire size they're wanting to use, the rear, in the case of just a transmission, not a transaxle, the rear gear ratio, and then what they want their top speed to be. And we have a program that I can put those inputs into. We have, in the case of the SEL 924 back here behind me, we probably have 40 different 2nd through 6th gear ratios to use, and I'd say 6 different drop gear options. So we can hit it right exactly where you want. We've got a couple autocross customers that, as Mike was talking about, being between those gears, they've got second gear ratio tuned to one track or one type of track that they go to all the time, and they got 3rd gear tuned to the other type of track they go to. So, if they're at the shorter course, they'll run only 2nd gear. If they're at the taller course, they'll run 3rd gear. With Mike talking about in his case in particular, so some of the Optima Challenge cars have to do a really tight autocross, but those same guys will go run Daytona or go run at Coda. Those are 2 completely different track types, right? Well, the 1st through 6th gear doesn't change any, but when you flop the drop gears or put a different drop gear And it takes that range and completely moves that range up to a fast track, and then you can move the whole range back down, but it doesn't mess with your gear splits in between.
That's impressive. And that's really cool. And a lot of the people we're talking to, I mean, when you talk about people who have these, track days, autocross, I see rally, some off-road. I mean, there's really multiple applications from purpose-built race cars to even converting street cars over, correct?
Yeah, correct. And that's the message we're trying to get out to the market is our 50 years of professional motorsports design, optimizing everything, bringing that product line and that thought process and design process into where the track day, time attack, those guys can get a hold of it and utilize it, because there's a lot of it to utilize, and there's a lot of it that makes a big difference. So when you think about what we have to do in the case of a race car manufacturer, where we're optimizing, like let's say in the case of a WRC rally car, where weight is everything, and everything has to be strong, it has to be light, it has to package small. We have to design all that in. So we put that technology into the transmission, like the SEL 924 behind us, and then you got guys that are coming up and they've got a standard H pattern transmission, and there's companies that make this gear kit or they make that gear kit that makes it somewhat like a real motorsports sequential shift transmission, but you're still not there yet. You still maybe have a really big OE, like 130-pound gearbox, where the gearbox behind me is 90 pounds, right? And it's been specifically designed to fit in that area. So you're optimizing everything. So you got the faster shifting, you got the optimized packaging, you got the gear ratios you want. I mean, it's going to take a guy that's in that middle range, the grassroots guy, or the time, it's going to catapult him into something completely different.
Yeah, that's really cool. I do want to point out too, Fuzzy, that as I mentioned, you're in Mooresville, North Carolina. SADEV is a French company, but you're not a distributor. You are SADEV. You are the North American arm of the company, right?
Correct. Yeah. Well, if somebody wants to purchase a transmission through us, it'll be delivered, manufactured, and delivered straight from France to them here in Mooresville. We stock parts. We have a technician in the back that's factory trained. We have the same dyno to test everything. So when we do a rebuild here on a SADEV transmission, it gets run across the dyno. We have build sheets on the server in France. We can make sure that the transmission matches what it did on the build sheet in France. So when the customer gets that, it's just like it's coming from the factory.
That's incredible. I do want to remind folks, by the way, if you have a question, feel free to type it into the chat, and we definitely want to, talk about what you want to know about as we go through this here today. Mike, I do want to ask you as well, what Fuzzy was just talking about. Literally, if you're here and you're ready to take the next step, adding a SADEV transmission, going to what we're talking about, how much of a step is that versus how much of a leap is that in the performance you're going to see?
I really felt like it was a leap for our program when we converted, and it was many years ago at this point. It's probably 4 or 5 years, but more than that, probably 6 or 7. And we were kind of struggling, even with a turbo car, with gear ratios and everything and shifting. And the old synchronized H pattern boxes just would have a lot of trouble shifting at high RPM, especially with super high torque loads like what we're producing now. And when we switched to the sequential, it was just a game changer. Everything was better. We looked at our plot of acceleration was just significantly better just by going to the sequential. And it was not only because the shifts are so much faster, but also because of the gear ratios. But, like Fuzzy touched on earlier, if you do have a boosted application, when you're able to flat shift efficiently, you're never getting that compressor out of spools. So you always have your car spooled up. It's always making maximum power and torque, and it's allowing you to just keep that acceleration curve really, really steep. And that helps a bunch. Anytime you can pick up half a second on a straightaway or something, that's huge. And with the turbo cars, that is totally plausible to get that kind of a gain out of it just by switching the transmission. A lot of people will spend crazy amounts of money on horsepower, and in actuality, you can get, better bang for the buck a lot of times by just making better use of the power that you already have.
Well, Fuzzy, then let's talk about, Mike had referenced this, but the difference between standard synchronized transmissions and straight cut gear dog ring transmissions.
Right. So I got a couple examples here to show. So what we have here is a synchronized transmission, and this is what's known as the synchro ring. So this gear is spinning on the main shaft freely. There's nothing holding it. It has to be splined to the hub with a slider. Well, on your main shaft, any of the gears are spinning at different speeds. So when you make the shift, in order to make the shift with the synchronizer, the slider comes in and pushes the synchronizer down, and it grabs on this taper and synchronizes the speed of this gear with the speed of the hub. And it's got very, very small teeth on it there. So that's what the standard H pattern street style transmission is like. And those synchronizer bands wear out, they stretch. There's a lot of small parts in there. There's still OEM parts. There's aftermarket parts that people make to make that part stronger, but it's still a synchronized transmission, and it has a limit to how quickly it can shift. So the dog ring style box uses a straight cut gear like this, and these are the dogs, and this is the dog ring. So you only have to mate those two together in order to make the connection. If you look at that, this is out of our SCL 924. It's got 5 dogs, so there's a very, very large window here for the dog ring to make the shift. So when you're making a very quick shift, and Mike can probably tell exactly what some of the shifts are like, but I know some customers are 40, 50 millisecond shifts. Well, when this gear is spinning different than the other gear, and you're going to make a 40 millisecond shift, you need a wide window for this dog ring to engage and go in. So that, on the internal workings of a synchronized transmission versus a racing dog style transmission, that's the part that makes the shifting so much quicker.
Mike, how about the feel of all of this inside of the car?
Pretty amazing. When you're driving a car that's set up really well with a sequential, you almost can't feel the shifts. It's like an automatic transmission on steroids, because automatics always kind of have that little bit of like slushy feel to them. And even a DCT, a dual clutch transmission has a little bit of that sluggish feel between the gears. Like you could feel the clutches applying torque or the torque converter, but with a sequential, the torque transfer is immediate. As soon as the gear's in, and the torque is all going to the rear wheels. So in that 50 milliseconds, you're going to full torque application, where a lot of other styles of transmissions like DCTs and automatics, they can't have full torque application quite that fast because they're dealing with torque converters and they're dealing with clutches. So it's really quite amazing. And if it's tuned properly, it's almost seamless. And in some of the big horsepower turbo cars that we run, you almost can't even tell when it's shifting, other than you just hear a little bit of a blip sound, and the car just keeps pulling all the way up to whatever your top speed is. And we've run them up to 200 miles an hour, and it's like they just never stop pulling. It's an amazing feeling.
All right, Fuzzy. So if I was looking at making some sort of a switch, and I'm sitting here thinking, well, maybe there are some add-ons that I could do to my OE style transmission versus doing what you're doing. If I'm ready for some add-ons or for an upgrade, does it make sense to do that, or does it just make sense to actually call SADEV and see what you can offer?
Well, I mean, from my perspective, I understand that people have budgets, have limited budgets and stuff. But as Mike said, people aren't afraid to dump a boatload of money into their motor, right? And then they kind of let the other stuff just do whatever it is. My personal feeling is on some of the update kits that people offer for existing H pattern transmissions. You're just taking a few steps there. And from what I've been told by some customers, the cost is pretty much close to what you can get into one of these SCL 924s with. The one behind me is designed specifically to take the place of a Tremec T56 Magnum. It's got an adapter plate on it. It bolts right in the same thing. So if you've got that popular OEM style aftermarket Tremec transmission, you can pull it out, put this transmission in, and it goes right in place of that. And you got a fully sequential. It's optimized. It's lighter. I mean, it's I don't know. I mean, I'd do it.
No, I get that. And Mike, let me ask you on this side of it. Look, as racers, a lot of times we're all very happy to start emptying our wallets on things that we think are going to make us go faster. And a lot of people start talking about power, power, power. Does power really matter if you're not getting all of the power down to the ground on the racetrack?
Yeah, absolutely not. And there's a lot of people that lose sight of that. And back when we were first starting to run a lot of the 1,000+ horsepower cars that we run, people said, well, you're not going to be able to stick it, so you shouldn't even make it, and don't worry about it. But things like the SADEV transmission and having the gear ratios the exact way that we want allows us to get that power to the ground, which is the only thing that matters. The only thing that gives you acceleration is the amount of torque you're able to apply to the track surface. And if you're not able to get it there, it's pointless. So anytime you can give yourself an upgrade or an advantage that allows you to get more power down to the ground more effectively for more amount of time, it's a win. It's a huge thing. And we're starting to see more and more people come on board and understand what kind of a game changer this type of technology is for them. But a lot of people just need that nudge of, hey, this is really what works. This is why it works. And this is why you should use it, because, you know, hey, it also allows you more expansion in the future. Because you say you have that T56 in your car and you're trying to bang gears with a big horsepower engine, you're going to damage that trans. It's not able to handle that torque load, especially with synchronizers. When we were running T56s, I was putting, you know, second gear synchros in the thing twice a year, you know, and now we've got the SADEV in there, and it just takes a whooping, and we're running way more power now. So it's just a lot more robust of a unit. There's another thing that I really like about the SADEV that we haven't touched on yet that I'm just going to like throw in here because it has to do with a lot of that longevity. And that's that the main shaft is kind of attached through the drop gears with a torsion shaft. And the torsion shaft actually acts like a spring. And if you're running super high torque loads or you get super high shock loads, that transmission's actually able to dampen those shocks and get everything to last longer. And it causes the driveline to just be able to hold up a lot better because you have something with a designed amount of flex in it that's going to give you that little bit of give and keep things from just bashing themselves apart. So I've really enjoyed working with the guys at SADEV because they've put so much thought into their transmissions. And they've held up so well. And, you know, like we've talked about the 924 box, and I believe I was one of the first people to actually even run one of those. And the transmission in my car has been one of the things we've loved. And everybody that comes in the shop that gets a ride in it or drives it or anything like that, they all have bought SADEV transmissions. Like all of those cars now have them because it is such a game changer. It's like, man, I'd rather sacrifice 200 horsepower and keep the sequential if I had to, you know, or maybe even more, because you just can't get the power down the same way without having that technology there. And it also is so much peace of mind when you're driving, because once you have it set up well, you can upshift in places that you previously would never even consider upshifting because you'd be worried about upsetting the chassis. Well, once you have a really well-tuned and sorted sequential, like we'll upshift on corner exits sometimes, and the car won't get upset. It'll just take it because the shift is so fast. And once you've spent the time to get the torque mapping correct, you can upshift wherever you want, you know, pretty much, and you can downshift wherever you want. It makes you have so many more options as a driver because you're not limited by that. Well, I'm mid-corner. I need to get to the end of this corner without shifting, or else be really careful and really slow on the shift, or else I'm going to upset the chassis and end up in the grass. So there's just so many advantages to it.
Wow. You know, I say, Fuzzy, while we're on that topic, can you talk about some more of the main features of the sequential transmission?
Yeah, in the case of the one Mike's talking about, we have the torsion bar that is splined to the primary shaft off the bottom drop gear, but instead of it being right at the front, the torsion bar goes up and grabs it from the end. Also, that particular transmission, the drop gear set is supported on both sides of the drop gear to allow it to handle more horsepower. I mean, I think Mike, you're at 1,300 horsepower and 1,000 foot-pounds of torque at the wheels, right? So I mean, that's some pretty stout stuff for a manual transmission, a sequential transmission that weighs 85 to 90 pounds. We also, again, it's Motorsports technology coming in. It comes standard with an oil pump. It always has an oil pump. It always has oil. If you're running it through a cooler, that's being pumped into the main shaft. The main shaft oils all the bearings. There's a spray bar in it. It's all race car optimized technology. It's not an OEM transmission that's been rubbed on to try to make it a race transmission, So, did I answer your question? I kind of got off track there.
No, I think so. I think so. I do have a couple of questions from the chat that I want to get to here real quick.
Yeah.
Do you design and sell the adapter for connecting the transmission to the block?
Yeah, on all of our transmissions have been in several different applications, some more than others. We do have certain adapter kits for certain transmissions that we've done. If we're working with a car manufacturer, the car manufacturer usually handles that. In the case of the product behind us, we have a NASCAR adapter, we have the T56 adapter, we have a Toyota 2JZ engine adapter, and we have BMW adapters. A lot of times what someone can do is like our SCL 8217 transmission, which is a little bit smaller transmission that's used in the Mazda MX-5 Cup series and the Toyota GR86 series. That has a Ford Type 9 bolt pattern on the front of it, which is a very common bolt pattern. So we'll try to coach a customer, say, okay, for whatever engine is you have, if you can find a bell housing clutch package that went to a Ford Type 9, then then it's an easy transmission to bolt on. The one behind me with the T56, I think there's a T56 bell housing for just about every engine platform on the face of the earth. So, you can just bolt it up to that. But yeah, if we don't have an existing bell housing input shaft system, we can usually point the customer in a direction, and if they need help designing it, we'll help them design it, and they can have one manufactured.
And you know what, to that, in which case can it be a perfect replacement for a manual gearbox? I know you have different models that really line up to current production cars and things like that. What can you tell us?
Could you go back to that again for me, please? I want to make sure I understand it.
So, like, say I have a Corvette, a C5 or a C6. What am I going to get from SADEV? Or if I have a Porsche or a front wheel drive, what's already in the product line that's going to be easily interchangeable?
Yeah. So the SEL 924, we have what I listed, but that same gearbox has a short tail version or a standard version that we have a kit that goes in the C5 and C6 Corvette, which is what Mike uses. There's a lot of shops like Mike that are using the Corvette C5 C6 drivetrain configuration with the torque tube and the transaxle in the back and independent rear suspension. They're putting those in other cars. So I know guys, Mike's car's Camaro, right? But it's got the whole Corvette driveline in it. We have other customers that have done similar.
Yeah, that's really special. All right, another question. Let's see. Can you touch on reliability and how often you would recommend a service for a mostly autocross / time attack Optima USCA car with greater than 650 foot-pound of torque?
That's pretty specific.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
But reliability and service intervals.
Yeah. In a full racing application, we recommend 2,000 kilometers, which is about 1,200 miles to inspect the gearbox. We have some customers that run like this. The question came through that'll send their gearbox in at the end of the year. have us go through it and look at it. And knock on wood, the ones that have come through like that, we really haven't seen anything. So I'd say an autocross guy or a time attack guy get a couple seasons out of it before having to look at it. Now, one of the cool things, here we go back, Fuzzy putting his salesman hat on, but one of the cool things is these little red plugs that are on this behind me. Those are inspection ports, and those line up right with the dog rings and the gears. And there's also a pleated stainless steel oil filter in there. So without removing that transmission from the car, you drain the oil, you take those red plugs off, and you can see your dogs, you can see your gears, you can inspect all of that. And it's got a huge oil filter in it that you can clean. So you can really monitor. Most of our transmissions have that sort of setup on it. So you can really monitor that and keep tabs on your maintenance.
That is really cool. I was actually wondering how if you had to drop it to inspect it, and that's really cool. You have that. All right, Mike, I'm going to throw this one at you here, and this is another probably more specific question. Can you shift without the clutch if you aren't wide open throttle with 200 TW tires on low grip surface? The peak performance challenge and autocross are rarely WOT. I'm not sure what that's an acronym for, with high horsepower cars. So I guess speak to the shifting, on the gas, off the gas, tires, all that.
Yeah, a lot of that has to do with your setup. So they're kind of asking if you could do part and wide open throttle shifts and low grip, and that would be absolutely you can. I would not do it if you don't have the electronics properly set up. So one of the things that this whole upgrade allows you, a window into is that electronics range where you can control the transmission electronically, but you can also control the torque output of the engine at different boost levels. So he's talking about speed stop and peak performance challenge and ultimate streetcar racing, which we've got a lot of experience with. And putting power down in those situations is really important. No car is really going to be able to take a wide open throttle 1-2 shift on any grip level without having some TC intervention or something like that. So with a good, well set up TC and a well set up transmission, when I was running those types of scenarios, I would just launch the car, wide open throttle, and grab gears. But we did spend time getting the car set up to where electronically it can do that. Is that a problem for the transmission? Absolutely not. The transmission will do it. But if you do apply too much torque to your tires on a shift, you are going to have an issue with spinning or losing control of the car. But it is definitely achievable to get it where you can do that exactly the way he's wanting to do it.
Okay, and thank you for the translation there as far as the acronyms and everything. I didn't even think about wide open throttle when I was reading that. But, and to that as well, when you're switching to, say, the sequential shift transmission, what does this do for your driving style and maybe how you might want to manage that and, sort of evolve what you're doing on the racetrack?
Well, it definitely changes the way you look at gear changes and shifting. And you need to kind of keep that in perspective. There's kind of a little bit of a broad range, like what we touched on with electronics and how in depth you go with your electronics package. You can actually have a sequential working really well, very simply. When we originally started running the sequential, we just had a ignition cut. And we just had an ignition cut set up to the ignition cut switch that comes on the gearbox. You hook that up, and then you're ready to go flat shift. And you can do that on upshift, no problem, without really complicated electronics. And then on the downshift, I would left foot brake with right foot throttle blips for the downshifts, and I would do it all manually. And it worked really well. Then as we kind of progressed, we upgraded the electronics package on the car to where now we've got, a pro motorsport engineer that tunes it. And it's crazy. It's like playing a video game. And the neat part is the hardware in the transmission is capable of doing both of those things. If you're someone that's, not ready to make the complete leap into the full electronic suite to get the most out of everything, you can absolutely take the step towards getting the sequential transmission and then grow into the electronics package and getting more and more functionality out of that. going forward in the future. But what you can't do is start with the, flat shifts and everything without the transmission. So, I typically would recommend start out with the trans, get comfortable with that, then start adding in the electronics and kind of getting used to how you drive it. Because like I said, one of the big things that you're going to change when you're driving is it definitely promotes more left foot braking on decel, because you would want to be able to use the throttle blips for the downshifts instead of the clutch. So instead of like a heel toe type of scenario, you actually don't have to move your feet. You just hold one foot over the brake. The other foot is, handling the throttle blips on the downshifts.
Yeah, that says a lot. Fuzzy, I want to circle back to one thing for someone who is curious about, okay, how does SADEV fit me and what I need? As I mentioned earlier, this is a French company, but in Mooresville, you are the North American arm of, you are SADEV.
Right.
Questions, if I have anything I want to know, if any help in getting the right set of gears and all of that for me, what do I need to do?
Yeah, you can call us here in Mooresville or email us. That information's on our website. There's also an info at SADEV USA, or a info.SADEV USA or something. I should have had that right. So, but you can go to that and ask the questions on that. Call us here in Mooresville, and even if you get a hold of our company in France, they'll get you hooked up with us, and we can do everything from here.
Yeah, and you have a great contact page on the website as well. Is also extensive information, all of that. Mike, I'm curious about you. If someone is wanting to get a little more of the racer's perspective of this, or find out more about what you do, what's the best way?
Yeah, they can get a hold of us on social media. We're super active on Instagram and Facebook. They could also reach out to me via email. It's really simple, just mike@dusolddesigns.com. So anytime somebody has a question, we're happy to help out. And we've done quite a few of the sequential upgrades at this point, and we've got a lot of experience with tuning the different cars and getting them set up to try to optimize the shifting and optimize the performance of them. So it's been a lot of fun, and we've really enjoyed working with the SADEV guys and looking forward to doing more and more projects.
Well, Fuzzy, is there anything that maybe we might have missed? Because to me, this sounds like if I either A, don't want to get beat on the racetrack, or B, want to up my game, I definitely need to get a hold of SADEV.
Well, we certainly feel that way. I'd say if you're a guy and you're looking at spending some money on your engine, but you're also thinking about doing an upgrade to sequential transmission, I'd save your money up another year and plop it down on a transmission and catapult yourself into the 22nd century.
Yeah, I would agree with you. To me, it sounds more fun being able to get around the racetrack this way than it would be just trying to add a whole bunch of power and figuring out how I'm going to manage that, because it sounds like you have about the best way to manage that power that among a lot of the people that we talk to.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, gentlemen, this has been wonderful. And it's been a lot of fun. I love what we're doing here. I do want to ask one more question from the chat real quick. It says, does the SADEV transmissions require a special type of gear oil to ensure reliability?
We just recommend a high quality synthetic 79 or 75 140 oil. We don't particularly push any particular brand, but that would be fine for you. And I also looked to make sure it's info.usa@sadev-tm.com to get a hold of us. I should have known that, but
wonderful.
Remember.
Yeah. Fuzzy, Mike, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun, really informative, and we really appreciate you.
Thank you.
But thank you very much, gentlemen. What a great webinar. So this webinar has been recorded. It will be posted later on the ePortrait platform, distributed through our newsletters and social media channel. A special thank you to Audrey out there who coordinated everything. And we pushed SADEV's product back on the homepage of the ePortrait platform. So if you can't remember Fuzzy's email, please visit www.eportrait.com. And then from there, you can connect with SADEV. So once again, thank you very much for being with us today. Next week, we'll be talking about coatings with line-to-line coating. So once again, for more updates and information, please visit www.eportrait.com. Thank you very much and see you soon. Bye-bye.
ePartTrade is a digital platform that we've created basically to make life easier in the business community of auto racing.
ePartTrade, there is no e-commerce. It's literally a connection just like at a trade show. So now, any time of the year, a buyer could reach out to a supplier.
When you see a product that you're interested in, all you need to do is click on request more information, and then from there it is forwarded directly to the buyer or to the supplier.
ePartTrade really eliminates having to travel, closing down your shop. Now you have a place to showcase globally your racing product and technology.
Land speed record holder George Poteet's Speed Demon rocketed 481 miles per hour at the Bonneville Salt Flats. You don't go that fast without ARP fasteners.
There is no way that we could go the speed that we've gone, the number of times we've gone, with a lesser quality bolt than ARP supplies to us. And we absolutely wouldn't be where we were today if it weren't for ARP.
When failure is not an option, it's ARP-bolts.com.
We're Performance Plus Global Logistics. Our team of dedicated performance industry and logistics experts get valuable cars and components to the track on time in top condition. We provide expedited logistics solutions for the performance industry using direct routes instead of deferred options, and communicate all necessary information to the appropriate resources to meet regulations and ensure a smooth transit and secure delivery, both domestically and internationally. And we exceed customer expectations by providing best-in-class service with an efficient and cost-effective system in place. Contact us today to book your next shipment.
You work as hard as your truck, and you have no time for downtime. That's why more truck owners trust Blue Def, America's #1 diesel exhaust fluid brand. Each batch is guaranteed pure, so you can avoid costly repairs caused by inferior DEF. Demand America's best for your truck. Blue Def and Blue Def Platinum. Put trust in your truck.
With roots in the Midwest that date back well before the Model T, Fifth Third Bank has a long history of serving the needs of automotive companies. While much has changed over the years, our passion for helping businesses put cars on the road and on the track has not. Today, we are more committed than ever as a member of SEMA, a founding member of PRI, and a sponsor of multiple race teams across several racing series.
For over a decade, Fifth Third Bank has been a staunch supporter of our industry and a great partner for many companies in the motorsports field.
Our business has been growing extremely fast, and really we could not be where we are today without Fifth Third. They provided amazing strategic advice, the capital we need to support our phases of growth.
They are true partners for me now, and what they do with their involvement in motorsports is untouched in this community.
Where can we take your business? Fifth Third Bank.
Where will you find Ferrea racing components, circle track, drag racing, and any top race shop? In every form of motorsports competition, our valves and valve train components deliver race-proven design and technology. And we've brought that same performance to our street applications as well. We're backed by 5 decades of experience, an extensive range of off-the-shelf components, and our custom valve department has the fastest turnaround times in the industry. Ferrea Racing Components. Stand with us or race against us.